Now, with that being said, man, let's segue over into our week 8 games and start making these picks once more. Let's see if we can improve upon what we've been doing. Now, first game on the docket is a bit of an interesting one. There are Sun Belt Championship implications in this one. Troy versus South Bama on a Thursday night. Who do you got, Shoob?
So this is a very interesting game. It's Thursday night, like you just said, and these are two of the best teams in the Sun Belt Conference, and they're both in the West Division. So the winner of this game right now, if you look at the standings, probably be in the driver's seat to go to the Sun Belt Championship game. So it is big in that regard. And we're gonna pick it 2-5-1 teams. And I'm gonna go with the team that is favored to win this game. I'm gonna go with South Alabama. Now, it was very hard for me to pick this game only because Troy does have their two losses, but we all remember App State got that Hail Mary against Troy back earlier in the season. And I really look at that and said, if App State had never completed that Hail Mary and Troy was able to win, Troy would look a lot better than what they do right now in terms of their record. They still do look good, but I like South Alabama. Think they have had a good season. They played UCLA very close. They narrowly lost to UCLA earlier in the year. Carter Bradley, their quarterback, I like him a lot. So I'm going to go with South Alabama. I'm going to give the edge to the home team here. But, as you can see, there's a reason why this spread is very close. And also take South Alabama to cover that -3 on the spread.
So when I looked into these two teams, they're both very, very evenly matched on paper. Their efficiency numbers are very similar. But there was one little discrepancy, and that was the defensive efficiency, which slightly favored South Bama. And for that reason, I'm going to go with South Bama. They're at home. They've got a little bit more efficiency that lies on their side to this point in the season. But again, Troy is a very quality team. This is a game that could definitely go either way. But South Alabama's got some weapons on their offense. Two wide receivers who are already over 500 yards this season. And I think South Bama is going to be a problem for Troy. This could be a very high scoring game. And so I'm going to take both the cover and outright.
Nice. So I think this means Troy's going to win now because we both picked USA to win and cover
I
the
thought
spread.
about taking Troy. I thought about just kind of like doing whatever taking the opposite of what you did, but I was going in with USA in mind. I was hoping you're going to take Troy.
Fair enough. No, but let's move on here. Number 14, Syracuse going on the road to face number 5, Clemson in Death Valley. Clemson's a 13.5-point favorite. We talked a little bit about this game earlier. Syracuse, this is like a really big time, put up or shut up type of game. We believe Syracuse is a little fortunate to be undefeated to this point. This is a huge game for that program right here. Can they keep it close, let alone win this game versus Clemson?
I'm going to say they're not going to win this game against Clemson. Clemson's going to win. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. Clemson win. But Syracuse does have a really good defense. They have a really good rushing attack. They've got a decent quarterback play. I think it's in the realm of possibility that they keep this close with Clemson. And so I'm going to say, because 13.5, I mean, with the quality of Syracuse's defense, and they actually have a little more offensive firepower than people give them credit for, I think 13.5 is a little bit much for me. I'm going to take Syracuse on the cover.
Interesting. So I also am going to take Clemson. I think that Syracuse's undefeated run comes to an end here. I think Clemson's going to win this game outright, and I'm pretty confident that. But, as always, usually with these types of games, it's the spread that's very interesting. And the 13.5 there, you would think, okay, Clemson by 2 touchdowns, they can win. That favors Clemson there on that line. Well, initially I was going to take Clemson, but the more and more I've looked into things and I've thought about it, like you said, Syracuse is a very solid team. They're decently efficient on both sides of the ball, and it is on the road in Death Valley, but it's going to be an early game. It's not like it'll be a night game or anything like that. I think Syracuse can hang around with Clemson. Clemson still hasn't really been super impressive. Like, they're a good team, but they're not an elite team. And I think Clemson wins and Syracuse covers the spread. So I'm telling you as well.
I think at the end of the day, I think that's what's going to happen. So it's going to be a good pick for both of us. Now let's move on to another G5 matchup with more potential championship implications, but over this time in the MAC. Toledo -7 versus Buffalo. What's your takeaway from this one, Shu? Both 3-0 in conference play.
Toledo versus Buffalo. The reason we're picking this is because this could be a MAC championship game preview. Both teams are the only undefeated teams in conference play left in the MAC. 3-0 in both sides of their division. So Toledo, led by DeQuan Finn, their quarterback, he is a stud. I like him a lot. And then Buffalo, our spread darlings, our best bet darlings. We're 2-0 riding the Bulls the last 2 weeks in our best bets. So this is a very interesting game. And you know what? I thought about this and I was thinking, well, you know what? Maybe I should pay some, respects to Buffalo for giving us some spread wins the last couple weeks. But I also really like this Toledo team. So I hate to do this to Buffalo, man. I hate to do it, but I'm going to take Toledo to win because I still do think that Toledo is just a better team. They are on the road, which would be a little bit tough, but because of that, I think Buffalo will keep it close. That +7 there, I like Buffalo a lot on that spread. They've been covering their spreads, so I feel like I'd be a fool not to take Buffalo to at least cover that spread, but I still think Toledo wins.
I mean, -7 would certainly indicate that they are the better team statistically speaking, and that's kind of where the casinos are going with this one. But I'm going to roll with Buffalo, man. I'm going to roll with Buffalo for the win and the cover, obviously, because they're the underdog. So I just like what they're doing for us, man. And I think Buffalo right now, they have hit their stride. They're playing really good football at the moment. And I think that -7 is just reflective of maybe some stats that came from earlier in Buffalo's season before they hit their stride. And so there's a little bit of discrepancies in that whole, and what ended up producing that -7. So I think it's a closer, I think it's closer than that when it comes down to what this will be. So I think Buffalo, if they lose, it'll definitely be within that range. So I'll at least get that spread pick.
Hey, I don't mind it at all. I was close to picking Buffalo to win this game, but I still had to go with Toledo, which pained me, but I respect that. So now moving on here, number 7 Ole Miss going into Death Valley to face LSU. This is going to be, I believe, a 2:30 local kickoff, so not necessarily a night game, but LSU is unranked here, but they're the team that's favored in this game. Another example of looking at spreads versus the AP poll. Sometimes there's some big discrepancies. LSU's the one favored here in this game. What's your take here?
And we talked about this a little bit off camera, and I truly think this one is legitimate. Like, staple a logo to either side of a coin. The LSU logo, the Ole Miss logo on the other side, you flip it, and that's basically your choice because it's going to be that kind of a game. It's going to be that close. I believe LSU's at home in this game. And so because of that, I'm going to say LSU home field advantage gives Ole Miss their first loss of the season. Now, look, I made a little hints earlier in this pod that I think some teams in the top 10 are fraudulent. That's not me saying that Ole Miss is a bad team, but I think they're the worst team in the top 10. And it's reflective based upon their first half of their schedule was very easy, and their one win against Kentucky was kind of against a hobbled Kentucky. I don't really know what to say, man. Their toughest part of their schedule is coming up, and I suspect there's going to be 2 to 3 losses on the schedule in the back end, and I think this is one of them.
I agree. I mean, I would rank TCU and UCLA ahead of Ole Miss in my personal top 25. I mean, you're right. Ole Miss, the reason why they're number 7 and undefeated is because they have played a light schedule. And let's not keep in mind here, let's not forget that Kentucky game they played, they got Kentucky at home, and they really probably should have lost that game. Will Levis fumbled the ball twice in the red zone in the fourth quarter in that game. And if not for those fumbles, Kentucky probably would have went on to win. And there's a reason why the spread reflects that here. I'm going to tell you here, I did not think that I was going to be tailing you here on this one, but I'm going to go with LSU, but I do think it'll be close. I was really impressed by LSU's offense last week against Florida. I think Jaden Daniels finally seemed to come into his shoes last week. He looked very uncomfortable against Tennessee, but I think LSU can get it done. I believe the home crowd here will help. And you're right. I don't really think Ole Miss has been ready for this type of environment on the road this year. They haven't gone to that hostile of an environment against a team of LSU's caliber. So I'm going to go with LSU as well, but feel icky picking this game because last 2 times I picked LSU here on this podcast, I've been on the wrong side of it both times. So hopefully this time it goes right for me.
Can't relate, my friend. But let's move on to another game over in the Pac-12 top 10 matchup. Number 9 UCLA versus number 10 Oregon. -6 in favor of Oregon in this game. This is going to be a great game. I will say that first off, Shoob. I think this will be a fantastic, high-scoring affair. But with that being said, where are you going with this one?
So this was another game that was very difficult to pick because you look there at that spread. I've been very impressed by UCLA up to this point. And after getting demolished by Georgia, I've been very impressed with what I've seen from Oregon as well. Both of these offenses are doing very well. Both quarterbacks are playing well. Both defenses aren't necessarily the greatest. Oregon's hasn't necessarily been as good as I thought it would be. It's still decent. UCLA still isn't the greatest, but it is going to be a good game, I think. And I think that UCLA is going to win this game. I think UCLA goes on the road and beats Oregon. And this is sort of half me making amends for saying that UCLA was overrated towards the beginning of the year and fading them. Now I'm going to sort of flip the coin here. I think UCLA is a legit good team. Their defense raises some questions for me, but the thing is, when we see Bo Nix historically, when he's gone into big games against good teams, he's always seemed to have very bad games. Like he's able to play well against inferior competition, but when it comes to playing good teams, he just seems to always have a blow up game out of nowhere, like against Georgia. I know obviously UCLA's defense isn't that great, but I don't know. I just got that weird feeling about this one. I can't really put my thumb on it, but I think UCLA is going to win this game and by default cover the spread. It's less me looking at this analytically and me looking at this one intuitively with my gut. I just got a feeling about UCLA in this one.
What?
I
What?
know.
Shoob not going with the stats? Wow. I thought for sure, and I was thinking in my head when I first looked at this line, I was thinking Shoob is going to pick Oregon and hedge UCLA. That's what I thought was going to happen. I thought he was going to be like, oh, the stats, oh, you got to hedge. Okay, man. I'm with you. UCLA both ways. I did
What?
not think,
No way.
yeah, I did not think you were going to do that. I was fully expecting you to go Oregon and hedge UCLA. I think
Wow.
UCLA is going to win this game. I think UCLA is a better team. I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson's the better quarterback. I think he is a dynamic dual threat guy who is going to give Oregon a hard time. And I think Bo Nix is going to throw a few interceptions. That's going to be very costly with a highly scoring, prolific offense in UCLA. Truth be told, I do think this is going to be a high scoring game both ways. I think that over is in the 70s. I don't know if I touch it, but it's going to be a high scoring game regardless. And I do think UCLA is going to win this game. And at the very least, man, if Oregon does pull it out, UCLA is not going to be down by more than 6 points. So you're at least safe for the cover on there.
Wow. I did not expect us to have this much agreement so far. I thought for sure this was going to be one of those weeks where we
I
disagreed a lot
thought,
with
I
our
thought, I
picks.
thought for sure you and I would disagree on this one because I legitimately told myself I'm picking UCLA on this one, and I thought you were going to pick Oregon and hedge, but guess not.
Wow. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see if Oregon proves us wrong. I mean, they are a 6 point favorite after all, but yeah, we just got that UCLA we got that UCLA Kool-Aid drinking right now going on. So how about another big game? Number 20 Texas in the Big 12. They're a 6 point favorite on the road against Oklahoma State, who's number 11. Oklahoma State coming off that loss to TCU in overtime, and Texas coming off that letdown that they survived against Iowa State. What's your take in this one? A lot of line movement in this game as well.
Oh yes, this game I believe opened up at Texas minus 2.5, and it's since shifted to Texas minus 6. So everyone seems to think that Texas is going to absolutely dominate this game. Um, I'm in agreement on that. I think Texas wins this game. I think Texas wins this game. They're just the better team. So the thing that really comes to mind here, and we mentioned it was kind of been a theme in this podcast when we talked about Penn State and we talked about some other teams in the past being dominated at the line of scrimmage. I think that's what's going to happen here. So Iowa State was able to kind of keep up with Texas because they have some dudes on their D line who can really make some penetration, like Will McDonald, for instance. They have some dudes that can absolutely show out. They have a top 25 defense for a reason. Oklahoma State does have a good defensive line, but they do not have a top 25 defensive unit. They have a top 40 unit, but I don't think that's going to be good enough to get it done against Texas. And I don't think Texas will slump, as you said earlier, 2 weeks in a row. I think Texas comes out guns blazing. Texas wins this game. But the thing is, Oklahoma State, they're not number 11 for no reason. They're a decent team. They'll find a way to do something in this game. They're not going to get blown out at home. I think Oklahoma State loses this by a touchdown, but I can see it being some fluky stuff. I'm going to take Oklahoma State on the cover.
Wow, you're taking them on the cover. I didn't think you were going that way either. I am in agreement with you. I think that Texas will win this game outright. It is very hard for me to pick Oklahoma State right now, knowing that Spencer Sanders also is kind of dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury. His completion percentage hasn't been that great recently. their offense just really seemed to sputter out at the second half of that TCU game. And it's like, are they going to be able to bring it? Are they going to be able to bring that first half firepower that we saw against TCU against Texas here? And as far as Texas, like you just said, I reiterate that I don't believe they're going to have a letdown game like last week. I believe they will play a pretty good game. And there's a reason why sharp bettors have been hammering Texas ever since this line opened up. You got an injured Oklahoma State team. Their defense has also been on the field a lot their last few games as well. And I think Texas wins, but did not think I'd agree with you here. But I'm going to also take Oklahoma State to cover just because, like you said, I still think Oklahoma State, they are at home. I still think they can cover this spread. I believe it'll be a close game. Now, this is also assuming that Spencer Sanders is healthy, because I believe with a healthy Spencer Sanders, Oklahoma State has a chance to win this game. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they win this game, but if Spencer Sanders is not healthy, then I would take Texas
Then
by,
it's a blowout.
yeah, three
Yeah.
touchdowns or more. But
Alternate spread. Yeah, big time.
I'm going to assume that Spencer Sanders is healthy and ready to play this game, and that this Oklahoma State coaching staff learned their lessons from last week. So that's me in agreement with you here once again. Very shocking. Too much agreement here so far.
Well, all right, Shoob. Let's move on over to BYU and Liberty. BYU is favored at 6.5. Liberty is quietly 6-1. Both these teams independent, so we are in battle of some of the top independent teams that are remaining. What is your take? BYU favored by 6.5.
Well, BYU coming off of that loss to Arkansas, we were wrong about that one, man. That defense for
I
BYU,
wasn't.
man. Well, you picked BYU at the end of the day.
Hey, well, it's because I didn't know if KJ Jefferson was going to play. I said if
That is
KJ
true.
Jefferson plays, I would pick Arkansas 100%. That's what I said.
That is true.
And he did play, and that's what happened. That's I remember now. But yeah, I ended up picking BYU because I didn't know if KJ was going to play.
That is true. I'm just shaking your chain a little bit, but still, I mean, BYU, they've been pretty disappointing, losing to Notre Dame, then losing to Arkansas. Arkansas went in there all banged up and scored 52 on them. And now they got to go on the road to face Liberty. And this is tough because Liberty is a very hard team to look at right here, because they seem to play up to their competition, but they also seem to play down to their competition. They have struggled against some really bad FBS teams as well, but they still are able to win those games. There's, Liberty still quietly is 6-1 at the end of the day. I don't think a lot of people realize that. It is very hard to jump on the BYU train right now. I'll say that. It is very difficult to do that. And I put this game on the slate here because it is interesting from an Independence and Liberty being 6-1 from that perspective. But as far as picking it, man, I have really no good read on this game at all. I'm going to take BYU to win because they are favored in this game. And, they have better athletes, better recruits at the end of the day. Jaron Hall also has been dealing with an injury, and we'll see if maybe another week he can heal up again and play a good game. But I think Liberty covers this spread, though, because they seem to play up to their competition. The Flames do. So I think Liberty will do that. Wouldn't be surprised if they win. So I'm going to say BYU wins this game outright, but Liberty covers, and not confident in it, as you've just heard from me.
I'm going to say the same thing, man. BYU, Liberty cover. I mean, that's the same thing. Like when you look at Liberty's schedule this year, they exactly what you said, man. They play up to their competition and they play down to their competition. They are a chameleon. They just do whatever the other team's doing. And because of that, I think it's going to be a really good game. Now, of course, I'm not going to pick against BYU because BYU is the better team. 100% BYU is the better team. But Liberty, it's 6.5 points, man. Like I don't know, man. Like I can totally see this being a touchdown game, but like when you consider it seven full points, when you have these like half line spreads like that, I always feel like there's some fluky voodoo in the air that's like always going to cost you that 1 point. And so because of that, I'm going to go ahead and take Liberty on the cover.
All right. So the agreement continues. So now moving on back to the SEC here. Mississippi State going on the road to face Alabama. Alabama's dropped number 6 in the polls, but they're a 21-point favorite at home here against Mississippi State. We talked a lot about both of these teams already on this podcast. Mississippi State coming off of a loss, Alabama coming off of a loss. Which team rebounds here?
Alabama's going to be the team that rebounds here. They're going to win this game. That's Let's not get that twisted. But this line is sitting there at minus 21, Shoob. And as explosive as Alabama is on defense, let us not forget that Mississippi State has a pretty solid defense in their own right. Mississippi State also has what is their strength, an elite passing attack, Mike Leach offense. And what's Alabama's weakness? Their secondary. So I think this could end up being a very high scoring game. I think Bama will win this by maybe 17 points. So I'm going to say Mississippi State covers.
So I'm with you. Alabama wins. I don't think a lot of people are going to pick Mississippi State to win. Like, it is just extremely unlikely that Alabama just lays an egg and loses 2 weeks in a row to inferior competition. They're not going to lose this game to Mississippi State. And as far as the spread, this was just interesting here. I agree with you that Mississippi State, they are able to throw the ball well. That's obviously a Mike Leach offense, but Alabama does have a good pass rush, and that has been the kryptonite for this Mississippi State offense. We saw them against LSU and Kentucky. They really struggled against teams that have good pass rushes, and I could see that also being the case here against Alabama. And
Bama did win by
historically,
40 last year.
yes, and Alabama seems to have Mississippi State's number. They seem to be able to shut down this offense. And it's kind of like, okay, which team is able to rebound and not play poorly 2 weeks in a row at the end of the day? And I hate to do this, but I think Alabama's going to cover here.
There
So
we
I know it's a little
go.
bit of a curveball. I originally was thinking Mississippi State, and I did bet on Mississippi State at a different number than this, but now that the number is sort of closed in, I got to go with Alabama here. I just do not trust Mississippi State. And I'm sort of using reverse logic here because Mississippi State is 5-2 this year. Guess which 2 games I bet on them? The 2 games that they lost. So there seems to be something with me and
You're just
Mississippi State.
scarred, man. You're just scarred.
There's something with Mississippi State that when I put my trust in them, they don't deliver.
Well, you
But
just put your
when
trust against them, so they're going to deliver for me now.
that, you know what? If that happens, then so be it. But I'm taking Alabama to cover. I think they can win by 24 or more. And yeah, I got nothing much else to say about that. So let's move on.
All right, on to the Mountain West shoe. Boise State versus Air Force, minus 3.5. Two of the better teams in the Mountain West Conference. Could potentially be, I mean, this could definitely be one that decides the championship game. So, with that being said, who are you taking on this one, Shoe?
Right. So these are two of the better teams in the Mountain West, and a win for either one of these teams would be pretty big in terms of their Mountain West championship outlook. Air Force is favored by 3.5 points. They are at home for this one. Boise State is coming off of a bye week. And I hate to do this because Air Force has been my team. I've been the one that has been waving the Air Force flag. I've been the one pushing the Air Force Falcon propaganda from the beginning of this year, from the offseason. I bet the over on their win total. I have a futures ticket out on them to win the Mountain West. I have just about everything. Problem with Air Force this year is they seem to be another one of those teams that is very hard to peg. And if you look at Air Force's schedule this year, they seem to dominate teams every once in a while, and then they play against an inferior team that they should also dominate, but then they lose by one score. So, and a lot of that has to do with the style of play, the option offense. You know, if you don't play well in that type of offense, it's very unforgiving. And Boise State, they did lose Bachmeyer to the transfer portal. They fired their offensive coordinator, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's been addition by subtraction. In the last 2 weeks, Boise State's been able to beat pretty handedly San Diego State and Fresno State, and their offense seems to be a little bit better with Jalen Green at quarterback. So I think Boise State coming off of a bye is a good chance for them to bounce back here, prepare for the option offense. And I think Boise State's going to win this game outright, which just pains me to do this. Absolutely pains me to do this because I love Air Force this year. But I'm going to take Boise State to win this game outright and by default cover the spread.
All right, Shoe. If you won't believe in your team, I will. I'll take Air Force here. And minus 3.5. You know what? I'm not gonna be a wuss here. I'm gonna go Air Force both ways, man. One touchdown for Air Force.
It pains me to do this, man, but I have to call it
I'm
like I see
I'm
it.
I'm picking your teams that you believe in, that you're going against this week.
I know it's I need to take a shower after doing this video here because I just feel very dirty doing this. But All right, final game of the slate here. Another ranked matchup in the Big 12. Number 17, Kansas State, and number 8, TCU. Both of these teams are the only undefeated teams remaining in conference play in the Big 12. Kansas State down to number 17 because they took that puzzling loss to Tulane at the beginning of the year. But TCU is a 3.5-point favorite. This is another big game in terms of Big 12 championship implications. What's your verdict here?
I mean, just like you said, man, if they hadn't lost to Tulane, this would probably be like number 8 versus number 10 or 11 right now. This would be a very top tier matchup. Not that it isn't already. This game is very important in deciding the Big 12 race right now. TCU wins this, they have a firm grasp and a firm chance to get into Arlington, provided they don't stumble against like one of the middle tier teams. But with that being said, it's also on the same cusp for K-State, man. They've already got the win against OU, as TCU does as well. K-State, a win against TCU would be huge for them. Then all they have to do is worry about Texas and Oklahoma State after that. So this is going to be a crucial game for both teams. TCU is at home. This is a night game too, isn't it?
Correct.
I believe it's a night game.
Yep.
Kansas State, great defense. Adrian Martinez, the one quarterback in all of college football who has not thrown an interception yet. Wow, who would have thought, man? Nebraska didn't have an Adrian Martinez problem. Adrian Martinez had a Nebraska problem. That was the whole thing. Who would have thought, right? But wow, man, this is just so hard to get a read on because we were high on both these teams, the two Purple Boys. And one of your early bold predictions was that one of the Purple Boys be playing in the Big 12 championship, and it looks really good right now.
That one's aging like fine wine, man.
It is, man. This is like 1,000-year-old wine. You know, it's really good. But hey, I'm going to go with TCU. Look, I think TCU is the better team. TCU also has a dual threat quarterback. TCU also has a solid defense, although it hasn't really been reflected because they have played some good teams here recently. But K-State has a great defense as well. But the thing is, man, this is going to come down to stops. Who gets the most stops? And TCU's offense is more prolific. I'm going TCU both ways.
I'm going to take the team in purple here. I'm not taking the purple team that you took. I'm taking the other purple team. I'm going with Kansas State to win this game. I feel like I'm rolling the dice a little bit here. Not super confident in this, obviously, but it is a close spread, obviously, as you can see. Kansas State did have a bye week to prepare for this game. TCU just came off of an emotional win in overtime against Oklahoma State. This seems to be a theme this year to where teams that we seem to talk about a lot and praise on this podcast because they had good weeks or big wins, and they always seem to have a letdown the next week. It just happens every single time. And this probably isn't the time this happens because I'm picking against it this time, but
I'm fine with that.
But no, it just seems like I said last week on the podcast, when things seem to be really good, they aren't as good as you think. And when things seem to be really bad, they're not as bad as it really is.
That's the thing about college football, man. Amateurism and athletes, and like you never know what you're going to get week to week.
Absolutely. Kansas State's very fresh. Like I just said, they have a bye week to prepare for this game. I just think that TCU's undefeated. They're the only undefeated team left in the conference in terms of their whole record. I just think that it comes to an end here. I think Kansas State wins on the road, and I don't necessarily think that Kansas State is a better team than TCU, like in the aggregate, but I think that in this particular game, I think K-State gets it done. K-State has the number 6 most efficient defense in the entire country. TCU faced a really good Oklahoma State defensive line last week, but they didn't face Kansas State's defensive line, and their defense, it's very good. It's top 10 in the country. So I think that K-State kind of gets them here. And I also, obviously, by doing this, I'm putting my trust in Adrian Martinez. I think that they were able to run the ball against TCU and kind of do what Oklahoma State wasn't able to do last week and sort of control the game for 4 quarters and put them away and hold this prolific Horned Frog offense to just a few enough points to win this game. So I'm going to go with K-State.
It's going to be a really good game, Shoob. Regardless of the outcome, I'm going to be very satisfied because I know that this game is so important for the Big 12 race, man. Winner of this could very well find themselves in Arlington. So definitely an important one.
Mountaineer Nation, let's ride. Mountaineer Nation, let's ride. Mountaineer Nation, let's ride.